presence. It's always like atrocities were committed here against people, and it is just horrible that happened. And that's probably the main reason why I switched from shooting asylums to shooting theaters, because I wanted to start photographing places where people went to enjoy themselves, went to have fun. And I was in an old theater in Manhattan seeing a movie with friends. And, again, I grew up in the 80s. All my movie theaters were multiplexes. So, I was looking around and I was just like, oh, wow, this is a gorgeous building. This is like a legitimate, like, Playhouse theater. It was the Village Cinemas in Manhattan. And it wasn't. It was a movie theater at one point, and again became a movie theater. So I started looking for closed theaters to shoot, with the idea of documenting the history of something where people went to have fun.
Well, too, look at the ceiling, the carvings and all that stuff. When you get into stuff like that, I mean, all the work it was involved into it. I mean, and then some of these, depending on what type of theaters you go to, I mean, they have their trap doors that go down to the basement where they used to bring up the people and down the people and all that stuff. I mean, and these theaters have, rich stories. If you could figure out who was, who was in there, who played those theaters through all the years, Oh,
yeah, absolutely. There's, I always joke that, you know who Al Jolson is?
Oh, yes.
That he played at pretty much every single theater I've ever shot. I've shot almost 200 of them, and anytime I do research, it's like, oh, Al Jolson was here twice. But, yeah, they do have a very rich history, and to be honest, they actually went up. They were built pretty quickly. Some as quick as 6 months, some, up to about 2 years. And a lot of the plaster that you see on the ceilings, some of it was made on site, but some of it was actually ordered out of catalogs. They used to have, and they still actually do have, plaster molding catalogs that you could just, like the architects would literally just build a theater by looking through these catalogs and going, okay, this piece goes here, this piece goes here, this piece goes here, and then order them.
Interesting. I only been in one or two old theaters in my life, but I tell you what, I even found stuff that was like, even back then was like 70, 80 years old. It was just, old, what do you call it, posters, old whatever of some of the famous people had gone through. You figure even some of these small theaters and even small towns, who gone through there? Houdini, Al Jolson, he was a famous singer. And all the famous people, Laurel and Hardy, the Three Stooges. I mean, you name it. It played those things in the circuit.
I actually shot the first theater that the Three Stooges came together at, which is in Brooklyn. It was the Prospect Theater. It's been carved up. The main level is now a grocery store, and the stage house is apartments. But the balcony is still there, and it was the first theater that Ted Healy and I think Mo and Shemp worked together at.
Yeah, Curly, I wasn't there afterwards, but later. Yeah, but I mean, not just them. It was a lot of famous people at the time. That's when theater was live. We're not talking about movies and stuff where they would get up there and they'd do their acts and stuff like that. Do you ever feel like when you go through one of those taking pictures, do you ever feel like any of the charisma or any of that atmosphere still like floating around in those buildings?
Absolutely, especially standing on the stage of some of these places, you can absolutely feel that, and just how they were built to carry sound, and just every little word that you say travels around. Because you think about when these were built, they didn't have the speaker systems we have today. They had to be built so that people in the back could hear you as well. So it just they have like a majesty to them. And I think a lot of it is, the way they look, of course, but also because of such a rich history.
Oh, yeah. Now, how long have you been doing this, Matt?
Theaters for 10 years.
Oh, wow.
But I've been photographing abandoned buildings for almost 20.
Now, whereabouts do you normally, where do you photograph at? I mean, is it in one area, or do you travel the country doing it, or what?
Travel the country. I just got back from California about 3 weeks ago, and I gave a lecture. I lecture on historic theaters as well. So I gave a lecture out there, and then I drove around California shooting a couple theaters and out that way. And before that, I was in Ohio. I'm going to go to London in 2 months. So I travel around quite a bit shooting these places.
Now, have you ever gone to Virginia City?
No, I have not.
That's one place. It's about one of the oldest. Well, it's not a ghost town because it's a tourist attraction now. But we're talking about a city. It was built many years ago, like in the 1860s, still there. And when you go there, you feel like you're going back in time. But they got a cool theater in that place. In the atmosphere, you walk in there and you can just feel it.
I will have to check that out. Yeah, any old. So is it a ghost town? Is it a?
It's a tourist town now, but I mean,
okay.
It put it this way: it's been there since probably 1840s or 1850s, still in existence today, and it looks pretty much the same as it did 150 years ago. So you go there and you feel like you're going back in time. You really do.
Oh, that's awesome. Have you been to or heard of Bodie?
Bodie, I've tried to go to Bodie twice, and each time I because the time of year I always go, and I always go the wrong time of year. I rode a motorcycle, and I would make the loop. I would go from Gig Harbor, which is next to Tacoma, Washington. I would go down, to Reno, then Reno, Las Vegas, and then before Reno, we'd cut back up to Sacramento and all that. On the way to Sacramento, there's Bodie if you go off a side road. And every time I go there, the weather, it's supposed to be good. We get there, guess what? It starts snowing.
I got to ask you as a photographer, Matt. I bet that place would be gorgeous to shoot in the snow.
Yes, it's gorgeous because you know what? There's still a couple abandoned. A friend of mine has gone there and shared their pictures with me. You go in there and it's still, and people haven't tore it apart, which makes it unique. But you go into the tavern, for example, there's still the original chairs there. There's still some dishes there. There's still some, things, relics that, nobody, because I guess if you get caught doing it, you're going to go to jail for a long time. But I mean, there's still things in the houses. There's still things in the theater there. I mean, it's awesome. You go back in time, and I think it's one of the most unique places of its kind in this country.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, have you filmed that, Bodie, Matt?
I haven't. A friend of mine did, and I made me add it to my list. And then when you talked about Virginia City, that made me think of Bodie.
Well, yeah, that's not that far away, Matt. I mean, you're looking from going up that direction, maybe an hour and 20 minutes, and then you're down to Reno, and then from Reno, it's about another half an hour to Virginia City.
Interesting that there's two ghost towns, or in about 2 hours of each other.
Oh yeah.
And I will say this much about Bodie. It's got a reputation of, if you go visit it, do not take anything home with you, like a rock, a pebble, or anything, because there's been a history of people bringing things home and spirits following them home. So I wouldn't bring anything home from Bodie if you go there.
I'll keep that in mind.
That's probably why they don't take anything. It's just really weird. And how it's set up. And also in Canada, I can't think of the name of the town, but there is a area that is, you can pay, but it's run by the government. It's an actual abandoned ghost town that they kept intact, and it's pretty good size. It's probably a good 100 houses, and they still have the old theater there. The general stores there, and a lot of houses, and you walk around that thing. I've been in there, that theater too, and I tell you what, it's really eerie, and the cemetery is right there.
You've given me quite a few things to add to my list.
Yeah, but it's unique to see something like that. It still exists, and they're not. They're not. They're preserving it, but they're not going through and put it this way. They're not. They're just keeping it from falling down. They're not, building it back up. They're letting it slowly decay. But I mean, it's a point where you see how people lived in the 1840s and 1850s, 1860s, and you walk into one of these houses, and I tell you what, it is really eerie. I mean, the last time I was there with my digital camera, I probably came back with a couple hundred pictures.
Oh, wow. I got to ask something, Matt. I know me and Gary was talking earlier. We've been to some places that were kind of rough shape, and we almost fell through the floors and stuff. Have you ever had some dangers like that you come across in your travels?
So I haven't fallen through a floor yet. I hope that I never do. But I have seen people fall through floors. A friend of mine fell through one place up to his chest, and it was actually an asylum in Poughkeepsie, New York, that's currently being demolished and turned into condos and hotels. But he fell through, and we noticed that we could just climb down the hole he made and get into the building that way.
That's one way to get in.
That was the entrance we used into the building for about a year, actually.
Wow, he's lucky though he didn't get hurt. I don't know. You probably weren't listening to the show. James were talking, but there was a situation where where I worked at for a while was originally a hotel and a brothel back in the 1870s, 1880s, 1890s, and all that stuff in Tacoma, Washington. And they cut a couple stories off the hotel in the 60s because it was unsafe. And I made the mistake because during my free time, I loved taking pictures. And upstairs, they still had the brick wall where they bricked off where the windows were, but it was unique. And they had the original linoleum from like the 1870s on the floor yet. Now, the walls were all tore out, but I would be up there photographing because each room had a different type of linoleum. And it was really awesome. But I one day made a mistake and stepped out too far where I never walked before. I fell through the floor. And the only thing that saved my life is my arms, I caught myself. And I was dangling, to one of the customers downstairs, looked and seen my body hanging from the, about 50 feet off the floor. And, the fire department and the paramedics all got there, and they managed to save my life, because if I would have fallen, I would have died, because there was probably a good 30, 40 tripods underneath where I was hanging.
Well, yeah, and 50 feet down, too. That would have been, that was, I'm glad you're okay. I've been through a lot of these buildings, and I've kind of been developed sort of a sense for a floor that I should not walk on.
That's a smart move. Hey, guys, we need to take a break. I'm going to put you on hold, so I'm not hanging up on you. We're going to be back in about 3.5 minutes. So, maybe go get a refreshment and something and relax. We'll be back in 3.5 minutes or so. You're listening to Night Dreams Talk Radio After Dark. This is Gary, our guests, Matt and James out there. So stay tuned.
You thirst for some significance of the both dimensional kind. You enter a realm of spirit, of sight and sound and mind. Your radio is a cosmic doorway, and your psyche begins to spark. When you tune in to Gary and the Sun and Night Dreams After Dark.